Olá! O Fronteiras do Pensamento apresenta a primeira parte da conferência, Os Desafios da Democracia, com Garry Kasparov. No programa de hoje, o enxadrista e ativista político analisa as situações políticas e econômicas de diversos países no mundo e ressalta a importância da construção da democracia em tempos globais. Acompanhe.
Good evening. I'm very proud to be here as a part of this great program, Frontier of Thought, among many speakers, highly reputed, who were here in this program before. Also, it's a pleasure for me to experience the hospitality of the capital gauchos. I have to admit that I feel at home here. And it's not just because of churrascos, and not exactly because of the climate, but because I was also born, as you heard from the presentation, I was also born in the deep south. So I'm from the far south. As you could see, it was the far south of the Soviet Union. Yeah, Baku, the capital of the now independent state of Azerbaijan. And Baku is almost the same distance from Moscow, 2,000 kilometers, as Porto Alegre from the capital of your country, Brasilia. So we all know, we have something to share, that the great things come from the south. And today we have a very heavy agenda. Politics, technology, strategy, a little bit of ancient medieval history, and the fate of civilization. And I have to also confess that here in the premises of this university, I feel good, because it's a refreshing atmosphere from some of the corporate events where I'm invited to speak. And quite often, the organizers, if major participants of the conference having business in Russia, the organizers politely discourage me from talking about Russia, politics, and especially Vladimir Putin. So it's like, you know, the Voldemort, he who must not be named. To a certain degree, it makes me feel happy because I think that I'm a Harry Potter. Yeah, and a discussion of Russia, and that's why I was so pleased to receive this invitation and to talk specifically about Russia and democracy. It's very important because it's not just something that concerns us who live there or our immediate neighbors. Russia is the largest country in the world, and it definitely has great importance for people on the globe. But also, Russia, Putin's Russia, is a sad example of how quickly democracy can be lost. And I think Brazil, from what I learned by being here for almost 10 days, should be applauded for continuing this difficult path of openness and human rights. So one interesting observation is that here in Brazil, this is a very example which plainly refutes two key myths of Kremlin propaganda. One is that only authoritarian regimes can secure steady growth of the economy. And while Russia and Brazil, they're part of this group known as BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China. In Russia, propaganda prefers to talk about China and India, ignoring the fourth country, which shows this tremendous growth in the economy by being a democracy. And the second myth, it's even more subtle. It's like, a little tricky, poisonous element of the propaganda for an advanced audience. And it says, the country with the large segment of poor population cannot have sustainable democracy, because poor people tend to vote for those who will redistribute wealth. So that's why in Russia it's unthinkable to believe that people with very little could politically support market reforms. And again, Brazil is a clear refutation of this theory. So when I'm back, I'm already thinking about writing an article just to present my own experience and to ask my countrymen to pay more attention to South America and the powerhouse of South America, your country. Now, just a few pieces of personal data. I hope I understood what was said in the presentation. And to my relief, I didn't learn anything new about me, which sometimes happens at big events. Yeah, but since chess was so strongly, and it is, strongly associated with intelligence, I was always asked throughout my professional career and after my departure from professional chess about secrets of success. And when I became the youngest world champion at age 22, there were many myths about me. So that I had a photographic memory, that I spoke 10 languages, ate special brain foods. Unfortunately, all myth. My memory is probably better than most, but my wife Dasha can tell you that I'm perfectly capable of forgetting appointments and birthdays. And as for food, I don't think the world is yet ready for Kasparov diet book. And as we speak about this personal history, there is a photo from those good old days I'd like to share. November 10, 1985. I'm just newly born world champion at age 22. Look at that hair, huh? This picture is the best proof of the connection between acquired wisdom and loss of hair. At the end of this ceremony, where I was the happiest man on earth, so just the strongest player at age 22, youngest ever world champion, sky's the limit. And I was approached by Rona Petrosian, the wife of the late world champion Tigran Petrosian. And she said something that stunned me, because instead of saying the normal words, congratulations, and all sorts of this nonsense, she said, "Young man, I'm sorry for you." Sorry? Just, I was trying to digest. She says, "I'm sorry for you because the happiest day of your life has just passed." I actually took several years before I just recognized that her words contained both bad news and good news. The bad news is that she could be right. But the good news is that it gave me a new goal to prove her wrong. So the most common question I get today is, so why, Mr. Kasparov, did you leave chess, professional chess, still being #1 on the top of the chess world, and why you entered Russian politics? So my retirement was after final victory in the tournament of Linares in Spain in March 2005. And I'm trying to explain the rationale of this decision, saying that when I play chess, I didn't play just to win the tournaments and collect the trophies. I always wanted to make the difference. So to keep myself at the cutting edge. I played against computers. I pioneered to use chess engines and databases in the opening preparation. Played very unusual, spectacular exhibitions. And always trying to make things happen. And already in 2002, 2003, 2004, I felt that I achieved everything I could have achieved in the game of chess. Actually, I fulfilled all my dreams, even beyond the wildest imagination. And I thought that I had to do something else. I had to switch my energy and my chess skills for other fields. And one of them is being a good, conscious citizen of Russia is to try to challenge the KGB dictatorship that has taken over Russia. Oh, by the way, there was the little piece of incorrect information you heard in the presentation. And people keep repeating it, and I cannot blame them for that. Because technically they're right, but in fact they're wrong. When they say, Mr. Kasparov, are you going to run again for Russian president? Assuming that I did it 4 years ago. Using words politics, campaigning, and other terms from the political vocabulary would be wrong to describe reality of Putin's Russia. Because here in Brazil, you fight to win elections. In Russia, we have a different fight. We're fighting to have elections. And just, another little cartoon to show the typical picture of Russian polling station, voting booth. So as you see, we have a great choice. So technically two boxes, but one of them is a garbage box. So when I started, okay, wait a second. When I started what you may still insist calling political career, I knew from the very beginning that the opposition was in a terrible shape. And using chess terms, we could say our opposition was dead lost. But that was not a game about winning or losing. That was, some kind of a moral duty. It's not about winning, it's not about losing, it's about making a statement. Because there was no other choice from my perspectives. Any attempt to compare chess and political landscape in Russia also fails because in chess we have rules. And even if I'm in a bad situation, I still know that my opponent will have to win by the rules set up before the beginning of the game. So making another comparison with Brazil, I can tell you that you have elections with fixed rules and unpredictable results. In Russia, we have quote-unquote elections with unpredictable rules and fixed results. Because Kremlin changes rules whenever they find it convenient. So what we do, we believe our best strategy is the tactics of survival. We just have to keep fighting to stay in the game. And those are also pictures that will tell you how the government reacts on a peaceful protest. Those are also pictures of my arrest in 2007. Okay, I cannot boast spending too much time in prison, only 5 days. But these pictures probably give you an idea that the only violence in the streets of Russia caused by the riot police. And despite the very violent history of my country, we in the opposition can proudly tell you that all rallies organized by the opposition, all the branches of opposition, the left, nationalists, liberals, they all are quiet and peaceful. There are no burned cars. There are not even broken windows. But it doesn't matter. We are always pursued by the riot police because we are seen as the real enemies of the Putin state. Actually, just a week ago, there were some arrests made in St. Petersburg after a very peaceful rally, and on the Russian internet you can read the police report about the reasons for the arrests of some of my friends and colleagues in St. Petersburg. I can give it a verbatim. Arrested for disturbing public order by reading aloud the articles of Russian Constitution. And still, there is a great uncertainty in describing Putin's regime in abroad. People are not sure about the nature of the regime because it's not a classical dictatorship. It's not a regime that looks so oppressive as in Stalin's times or even in Brezhnev's times. But that's why I recommend you not to look for a political science section in the library if you want to read about Russia, but rather you go to the literature department. And you can probably read Mario Puzo's series of Godfather. Yes, Putin's regime is non-ideological. It's about power and about money. So their motto is not to unite all workers in the world. Their motto is far more graphic. Let's steal together. So in reality, it's some kind of very bizarre combination of Adam Smith and Karl Marx. Because on one side you have expenses that are nationalized and profits that are privatized. So welcome to the KGB Incorporated. And the first export from Russia, you think it's oil? No, it's not oil, it's not gas, it's not timber, it's not even weapons or nuclear technology they sell to Iran, Syria, and Venezuela. Russia's #1 export is corruption. So Western companies eager to share in the looting of Russian treasury, they must do business on the KGB terms. So instead of the West reforming Russia that we all expected 20 years ago, the state as business model has moved abroad aggressively. Now, I believe many of you could say, okay, we all experience corruption, and I agree. Corruption is not a unique Russian invention. Corruption does exist everywhere, in Brazil, in Europe, in the United States. But here in Brazil or in America, in the US or in England, corruption is a problem. Some were bigger, some were smaller, but it's a problem. In Russia, corruption is a system. And as I mentioned already, there are certain problems of identifying this regime because, again, we're all looking for certain conventional elements that should help us to identify democracy from non-democratic state. And here it comes. We very often have a misconception about democracy, and I would like to shift a little bit from practical realities on the ground to somehow more academic discussions as we are in the university. Here are 3 documents that I want you to look at. First is the English Bill of Rights, 1689. Second is the most known, is the Declaration of Independence, 1776, the United States. And the third one is probably least known, but is equally important, is a French Declaration of the Rights of Man by 1789. So we may call these 3 documents the founding documents of modern society, the pillars of democracy. Now, there is a tricky question. How many times in these 3 documents the word democracy is mentioned? The answer is 0. There is no word democracy in any of these 3 documents. The method by which leaders were chosen was not the most relevant issue. And those who invented the concept of democracy, wrote these documents, they understood it. The fundamental rights that define the relationships between the government and the people, that is what mattered. And that is still true today. But today, democracy became a very popular brand. Thugs and autocrats use it like a weapon and a shield. Everyone wants to have elections today. So anywhere in the world, you have some kind of elections. And the argument is we have elections. What else you want? And very often, the Western world accepts these fake elections as the demonstration of adherence of certain country to the democratic rule. But in many cases, it's just a lip service paid by the autocrats and even dictators to buy favors from the free world. And in many places, the word democracy attracted some absurd adjectives, most absurd adjectives, like sovereign democracy, managed democracy, consolidated democracy. And in all these cases, the word democracy is the cover-up for authoritarian or even totalitarian states. Great Britain doesn't have a written constitution. Not at all. Meanwhile, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, and Russia have constitutions that would, if followed, would serve as the relatively tolerant documents. But without respect for human rights and individual liberties, these documents are used to paper over countless abuses. It's the rights that matter. And Putin can allow few token seats in the parliament for pocket parties registered by Kremlin permission, and it has no real effect on a true democracy in Russia. Because democracy without rights is a sham. Election without selection is a charade. And a law that serves only the state is dictatorship. Because what is moving people is a desire for revenge. And this desire for revenge can triumph over justice. And by the way, that's still my great fear in Russia today. Because Putin has eliminated political opposition. But frustrated population at one point can turn violent. But so far, as I already mentioned, we succeeded in keeping this protest without any sign of violence. So now let's look at the modern development of the opposition to the tyrants and dictators. And everybody, of course, is talking now about so-called Arab Spring. And I want to give you probably a nice historic perspective, what I call from Gutenberg to Zuckerberg. Because technology has a crucial role in shaping political reality. So when information goes to people, there's a chance, it's a much better chance, they will oppose non-democratic regime. They will demand more for them, for average people. They would like to protect their rights. And of course, the invention of the printing press by Gutenberg made Martin Luther's Reformation possible. And in the beginning of the 16th century, thanks to the printing press and the books that broke the monopoly of the medieval rulers and Roman Church over the information, things changed in Europe. It was a new political reality of those days.
Você acompanhou a primeira parte da conferência, Os Desafios da Democracia, com Garry Kasparov. Na semana que vem, confira aqui a segunda parte. Obrigada pela sua companhia e até o próximo Fronteiras do Pensamento.